Hello and good day everybody. My name is Nelvin Amos from Syndom Technologies Tutorials. In this video we will learn how to bind checkboxes using MVC. We have three topics. Number one is how do we normally bind checkboxes to MVC. Number two is how does the model binder works. And the third is what we need to know when we are using request.forms. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so I already have a web application solution created using Visual Studio 2015. Let's get started. Let's create a model first. We'll call it my model. And this is a checkbox, so we need a Boolean property. Let's call it is person. So this is going to be a checkbox that will be that we wanted to bind it to. That will be the property. All right, so I'm open this controller. You initiated my model equal to new model. You need to reference it, so control dot, hit enter. All right, let's find it, and then we'll pass this item to the view. Build. Okay, and then we go to the index page. I've already deleted all the entries, so let's keep some blank space here. And then let's create a form using HTML.begin form. Okay, in this one, let's render using Razor HTML.checkbox for x such that x dot is person. All right, because we have not declared our model yet, so let's declare our model as my model, which is coming from checkbox binding dot models dot my model. Okay, so x dot is person. It should be correct. Let's just try. I think my intelligence just doesn't work. All right, so we got the checkbox created, which is a checkbox you can click. All right, so things looks to be okay. Let's close it down and let's continue. So we wanted to also display, let's say something like, are you a person? All right, instead of doing this, let's move on to the model that we created. Let's make use of the data annotation property by declaring display name, the name that we want to get displayed, by saying check the box if you are not a, let's say, not a robot. Okay, and where do we get this? Using the data annotation class. All right, so we get it to good, build, and here let's say HTML dot label for x such that x dot is person. Let's refresh the page and see what happens. Okay, check the box if you're not a robot. All right, so the checkbox is generated already. Let's submit it. Button type equals submit. What's the label? Let's put submit. So to submit this one, we need a method that we wanted to return to. By default, it will be index. So let's not give a different name. Let's say index. Let's define this as HTTP post, right? And let's say we are accepting a model, which is post model. We don't need this. Now the data will be submitted. Just to help us verify if we're getting the right data, we'll declare one thing here. If the model.isPerson is equals true, that basically means if it is checked, then we will say it is checked. Let's say it was checked. Okay, else it was not checked. All right, and let's also make sure that this checkbox is having the data of model dot is person, the value of the is person. So now let's go back, refresh. All right, so we have it was not checked because the first time by default the value was false. Now unchecking, click on submit, the same thing, check it, submit, we're not getting it. So basically it means it was not submitted. So let's see where is the problem. We're saying model.isPerson, model.isPerson. We're declaring this one. Oh, I think we have not built it. So let's build this. All right, go back, refresh. All right, so it's getting it. It is checked, you submit, it is checked, uncheck it, submit it. It was not checked. Simple. So that's how you bind basically a checkbox using MVC. Now, second part is understanding how this binding actually works. Now, you looking at it, it seems so simple that it's a checkbox. It's just a true or false. The binder would have just picked up whether it was checked or not. Well, actually, it is not the case. So we will learn about it when we go to the next stage. So let's right-click this. If you go and inspect the elements that we have here right now, it's pretty strange that you have, unlike other elements that you would be having, you have two elements always generated by the Razor engine when you are trying to bind a strongly typed checkbox. One is an input type which declares, which set the value equal to true. And there's another input type which is of hidden, both of them having the name as isPerson and isPerson. Type is hidden. For this one, the type is checkbox, the value is false, value of true. Now what happens is, whenever the data of a form which contains a checkbox is submitted, if the value is not checked, this entry itself is not submitted because it is not checked. It is ignored by the binder. But instead, this value, which is the hidden value, is submitted. Now, when this is checked, it is considered. So the values of this one along with this one is submitted, both of them. Now, how does MVC model binder works? We'll look into that. So coming back to the controller, let's say we wanted to track the activity of this one. Let's declare viewback dot submitted value equal to request.form of isPerson. All right, build it, and here in the case we will also see if it is checked, it is fine, but if it is not checked, I wanted to see the value of isPerson is viewback dot submitted value. If it is equal to null, then say null, otherwise viewback dot submitted value. So what I wanted to know here, build it. Let's refresh the page. Okay, so I left it unchecked. If you hit submit, the value is false. If I check it, the value is true. So based on the condition that I have, if it is true, it does not show anything. Only if it is not checked, it will show. So which is exactly the same data that I get when I was using the previous model binder concept. The value of this one returns the same. Now coming back to the point that I'm trying to make here, if you go and inspect this element, you see that these are two different input elements. One is a value of true, one is a hidden type of false. So I wanted to avoid this strongly typed model that was generated by the Razor engine. Instead, I wanted to create my own class. So let's comment this section. Let's create a similar element, input type equal to checkbox. The value is always true, and the name that I wanted to give for this one, because I wanted to bind to the isPerson property, person, and close it. Similarly, I will give a type of hidden, and this value will be false. Now let's see, what do we get? We're no longer using the strongly typed model, but we are creating our custom HTML element, sorry. So I left it unchecked, hit submit, same result, false. I put a check, it was checked, right? Okay, so we're getting the same result. Now let's see if we can get the same result without the hidden value. Okay, refresh. Okay, so I left it unchecked. If I submit it, it was not checked, the value is null. So there we go. Now if I leave it checked and submit it, it is checked. All right, but if I leave it unchecked and submit, the value is null. So what do we conclude from this one? We conclude that when an additional element is not placed here, and if you have left this element, the first actual checkbox unchecked, this data actually is not submitted to the server, and hence the result of null comes back. That means it was not even false, it was not even true, it is null, it is not submitted to the server. But if you include this hidden value, regardless of whether you check this item or not, the correct value was submitted. So now, because of that reason, we need to be very careful when we submit or when we try to process a submitted checkbox value using a request.form. Now I'll tell you why. Let's say I am not doing an MVC model binder for some reason, because my model is so complex and I am not able to bind it using this model. Instead, I prefer to accept everything using my request.form. Okay, so I will create another method. Let's say another one, and I do not want it to be submitted by to be binded by the model binder. Instead, I wanted to create my own model here. All right, so what can I conclude? I know that the isPerson is part of the property, and I would know that it would be easy to convert it. So what I will do, I will just simply say, let me put this on the top. Okay, and I'll say post model dot isPerson equals bool.parse. Then what I'll do, request.form isPerson. So normally speaking, I would expect that this is the value of the isPerson that is going to come back from the form that is submitted. I should be just easily be able to parse it back whether it was a text in true or false format, and I should be getting the Boolean value. That is my expectation. So let's find out. In this one, I will have to also change the target now. It will be another one of the home controller, and the form method is going to be post. Everything looks good. Now I am leaving this one by the default behavior. Let's find out. And one more thing that I missed, because I'm going to get an error, another one, because there's no view associated with it. So we will return the view of the index by passing the post model. Okay, build, refresh. Okay, so I left it unchecked, I submitted. Now I'm getting the value back because I have already uncommented the field here. And then if I check it, now I'm getting an issue. And why is this? The reason is because we are getting a string was not recognized as a valid Boolean. So what actually happens? This is the second thing that we need to know. All right, the first thing was that when you leave it unchecked, the value was not submitted. So you have to have this. Now the second point is, when you have this, why am I still getting an issue? The reason is the form value is submitted to the model binder in this format. The first one, when it got submitted, this value is always submitted because it is just a hidden value, and it is always a value of false. All right, the first value is submitted depending whether this checkbox is checked by the user or not. When it is not checked, because this value is not submitted, nothing gets submitted, so this value gets submitted. Now the second scenario, when this value is checked by the user, like what we just did, when I check it and when I hit submit, which means that this value is also becomes valid, this checkbox also becomes valid, thereby taking the value which is true, it will submit true. Checking this one as well, this is a hidden field which is always valid, the value is false, so separated by a comma. So this is the value that is submitted to the model binder by the HTTP POST event. So this is the reason why when you try to parse this one, boolean.parse request form is person, we just don't get the single value which is either true or false. Instead we get this statement. This is the reason why we are getting a parse error here. So how can we overcome this? The first thing to overcome is we cannot remove this, as we already know, because if we remove it, we will get a null value. So the only workaround that we can do to fix this problem is by making sure that we write the proper code. So first thing, we have to check if this value request.form.isPerson, okay, is not equals null. That's the first thing that we wanted to check. All right, we want to make sure that it is not null. Or another way, let's write a single conditional statement. If it is equals null, then we will return false. Simple. If it is not null, then it means that there is a possibility of either getting just false, or there's a possibility of getting true, comma, false. So we will do request.form.isPerson. Let's make it to string, right? Because it's no longer null, we will not get any problem. We will split this into comma separated, and we will only pick the first one. How about that? So, sorry, I think I have to put a character code here. Yes. So what does that make it? So now that we know that this string can be either false with a comma or without a comma, we'll split it. So there will always be one. We pick only the first one. So now, if you try to convert this bool.parse and put this post model.isPerson equals. So there's a slight difference between the old one and the new one now. In the old one, we directly try to convert this one, but the string is not parsable. So in the second one, we make sure that we are trying to parse it by putting this boolean dot. All right, request.form is person. We're splitting everything, and then we put this. So let's comment this off. I'm going to build this. Okay, go back and then refresh. Uh-oh, sorry. Save. Okay, so I leave it unchecked, submit. Now I'm getting the value properly. It's false. Now this is the test. Check, submit. It was checked. Everything's going good. So now the only thing pending is this box was not checked. So all we have to do here is in this field, we have to check if the model.isPerson, that is true, then put a text which is checked, otherwise don't put anything. Refresh again. All right, so it was checked. I will uncheck it and submit it. It was not checked, the value was false, no longer null. If I check it and submit it, it was checked, and it also retains the checkboxes. So with this, we have covered three very important things about checkbox binding. One is understanding how to normally bind a checkbox using an MVC standard binder. We don't really have to do anything, but at times, you know, we wanted to customize it, because as and when we try to come up to some advanced level of development, it's not always feasible to use the standard binder. So we know how to do it, but just in case we wanted to write our own custom checkboxes, we can do it using this way. And the third thing that we have learned is how important it is to understand how data is submitted, because if you try to simply use the checkbox's value using request.form this value, you'll get an exception because of the double nature of the input elements. Now that being said, it is not always bad to have multiple data submitted by checkboxes. We will look at the advantages and how we can make use of this feature in our upcoming videos. I hope you learned something new in this tutorial. If you like it, please like or subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.